for the labor. We're thinking about 4 ounces at the end of the season. You don't need to pay it now, but at the end of the season.
That is not going to be an issue. If the production goes up and we can get the gold, we can make it work.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can.
We have to.
Yeah.
If you thought gold mining in Colorado was over, think again. Freddie and Juan are about to prove there's still fortune buried deep in these hills. And trust me, what they pull out of the ground will blow your mind. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and let's dig in. The sun had barely crested the jagged peaks when Freddie and Juan's truck rolled into a forgotten Colorado valley. The headlights cut through a thin morning mist, revealing swampy terrain tangled in willows and half-buried relics from another era, rusted buckets, splintered timbers, and the sagging remains of an old sluice box. It was the kind of place even seasoned miners avoided, and the kind of place Freddie couldn't resist. They wasted no time. Juan waded into a shallow bend of the creek, shoveling gravel into his pan. With slow, practiced motions, he swirled the water, washing away the lighter sediment. Then, as the muddy swirl cleared, there it was, a scattering of fine, bright gold specks clinging stubbornly to the bottom edge. Freddie crouched beside him, instantly recognizing the unusually vivid color. High purity, maybe even richer than anything they'd seen this season. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't ignore the locals' whispers. Stories of accidents, disappearances, and a curse that hung over this ground for more than a century. By midday, they had a plan. Soil samples were pulled from the creek banks, the gravel ridge above, and a patch of dry gully nearby. Each bag was tagged and loaded into the bed of the truck for a run to the assay shack in town. Hours later, the results came in, an average purity of 92%. That kind of number didn't just turn heads, it made rival miners start watching. Juan wanted to strike immediately, bringing in heavy machinery before anyone else caught wind of the results. Freddie argued for patience, for mapping the pay streak first to avoid burning fuel on dead ground. In the end, they split the difference, partial move-in of the big equipment, while test pits kept probing the richest zones. When the excavator finally bit into the ground, the difference was instant. Beneath layers of sodden overburden lay a dense, untouched gravel bed, packed tight and sparkling in the midday sun. With every scoop, the wash plant sang. Gold was appearing in almost every cleanup, and the pumps roared non-stop to keep the pit from flooding. The first official cleanup was jaw-dropping. $148,000 worth of gold, pulled in just days. Word of the discovery spread quickly, drawing more than just curious eyes. Tracks. That's what Freddie saw first. Not the random kind, left by hikers or hunters, but fresh, deep tire marks pressed into the damp dirt of the access road. The pattern was wrong for their own trucks, too wide and too clean. The kind left by someone who'd been here within the last 24 hours. He didn't like it. A valley like this didn't get casual visitors, not with the terrain chewing up most vehicles before they even made it past the first mile. The feeling in his gut hardened the next morning when Juan spotted an unmarked pickup on the ridge above the claim. It sat there for nearly half an hour, its driver shaded behind tinted glass, engine idling before it finally rolled off without a word. Freddie didn't need to guess what they were doing. Scouting. Word about their early cleanups was getting around faster than he'd hoped. In mining country, that was as dangerous as any broken cable or cave-in. The next few days brought more signs. A local landowner casually mentioned to Freddie that some fellas had been by, asking about leasing plots right next to theirs. Juan heard a similar story in town. Different guys, same line of questions. The moves were subtle but clear. Someone was trying to box them in. Freddy's response was methodical. Every piece of their claim paperwork was pulled from its files, triple verified, and copied into multiple backups, physical and digital. Legal contacts were put on alert. Security cameras were ordered, but they'd take time to arrive. In the meantime, they kept working, knowing that slowing down now was exactly what the other side would want. The line was crossed one misty morning just after dawn. Juan was making his first walk of the site when movement caught his eye near the tree line. A man, head down, swinging a metal detector in slow arcs, stepped casually over a survey stake. Juan didn't bother yelling. He walked straight toward him, boots crunching over the frost, and the stranger froze. For a moment, there was just the soft hum of the detector. Then Juan's voice, low, sharp, no room for argument. The man backed off without a word, disappearing into the brush as quickly as he'd come. But his presence made it clear they weren't alone anymore. Tension on the claim didn't slow the dig. The excavator cut deeper until the bucket teeth scraped something harder than gravel. Bedrock. Freddy hopped into the pit himself, crouching to inspect the exposed surface. The rock was rough, ridged, perfect for trapping gold. And there it was, glinting faintly in a shallow crack. Not just dust or flakes, but a solid piece. He pried it free with the edge of his glove and let it drop into Juan's palm. A nugget the size of a thumb, weighing just under 2 ounces. It was the kind of find that could change the math overnight. Running numbers in his head, Juan guessed that if the bedrock stretch kept producing at this rate, the total season haul could blow past $3 million. The thought was almost intoxicating, but in the back of Freddy's mind, the find stirred something else, a memory. Years back, an old prospector in town had told him about a hidden shaft somewhere in this valley, a mine that had been sealed in the late 1800s after a deadly cave-in. No one ever said exactly where it was, and over time the story faded into local folklore. But Freddy remembered the man swearing there was gold still inside when they closed it. That rumor felt suddenly relevant. It didn't take long for the talk to spread among the crew. Everyone had heard a version of the same tale. A rich vein, a collapse, miners trapped inside. Some said the survivors sealed the entrance to keep scavengers out. Others claimed they fled because of unstable rock and gas pockets. No one had ever gone back to confirm either way. With the bedrock now producing well, they could have ignored the legend and just kept digging. But Freddy knew the ground here was telling them something. He and Juan started looking for signs, anything that might match the old story. They didn't have to look far. A sweep with the metal detector near the western edge of the claim turned up a faint but steady signal. Not the sharp ping of a single nugget, but the broader hum of something larger beneath the soil. Pushing through a tangle of brush, they found it. A rotted wall of timbers, barely visible under layers of moss and dirt. It was old, older than anything else they'd seen on the claim. To be sure, they brought in ground-penetrating radar. The scan lit up with an irregular void beneath the surface, running horizontally before dipping steeply down. The pattern was unmistakable, a tunnel, partially collapsed, but still there. Freddy pulled out the worn copy of an 1880s mining map he'd gotten from the town archives years earlier. The location matched almost perfectly to a shaft marked Hawthorne, the same name that had come up in those old campfire stories. Seeing it in black and white made the hair on his arms stand up. They went back to the locals, asking direct questions this time. Some shrugged, saying the mine had been shut down for safety. Others were more cryptic, claiming the men who sealed it swore never to talk about what they saw inside. The stories conflicted, overlapped, twisted into each other until fact and fiction blurred. But the message was the same. The Hawthorne wasn't a place you opened lightly. Freddy looked at Juan, and Juan looked right back. There wasn't much to discuss. The decision was already made. The shaft would be opened carefully, methodically, but opened all the same. As the excavator clawed away the upper layers of silt and moss, timbers long buried began to emerge. What wasn't just another rotted support beam, it was a structure deliberately built to last. Thick oak posts, braced with rusting iron bolts the size of a man's fist, stood locked together in a pattern that spoke of both craftsmanship and urgency. This wasn't a casual barricade, it was a warning in physical form. Beneath the grime, a carving appeared. Rough, uneven letters gouged deep into the wood. "Keep out. Dead inside." The crew stood silent, eyes locked on the message. It was the kind of warning you saw in pulp horror, not on a live claim. Freddy knelt, running his hand over the grooves, tracing each letter. The age of the wood and the weathering made it clear. This message had been here for well over a century. Whatever was behind those timbers, someone in the 1800s had wanted it to stay buried. The surrounding wall wasn't just dirt and rock, it was an engineered seal. Packed clay, mortar, and slabs of granite had been wedged tight to make the barrier impenetrable. Freddy ordered a drill core to be taken from the edge, and as the cylinder came out, flecks of milky quartz gleamed in the sun. More importantly, specks of yellow flashed between the grains. It was the kind of color that made a miner's pulse quicken. The readings confirmed it. Gold was locked in there, and not just trace dust. This was high-grade ore. The find sparked an unspoken energy among the crew. They'd all been through dry seasons, empty pans, and false hopes. This was different. The sealed entrance wasn't just a relic. It might be a time capsule of untouched wealth. And if the gold in the core sample was any indication, it could rival anything found on the surface. Within hours, the air was filled with the mechanical growl of rock drills. Ventilation fans were set, ducting snaking across the site to ensure breathable air once the barrier was breached. The crew worked cautiously. Every strike into the clay and rock had to be calculated. The timbers creaked under the shift, and more than once they paused to check stability. Unstable rock above meant they couldn't just smash through. One wrong move could bring down the whole face. It was nearly a full day before the first breach appeared. The moment the bit punched through, the fans kicked into high gear. What came out wasn't fresh mountain air. It was stale, dense, and cold. The kind of air that had been trapped for generations. Juan, tightening his respirator, shot Freddy a look. Freddy only nodded. This was the moment. The final section of the seal gave way with a muted crack, a slab of rock sliding forward and thudding into the mud. Beyond, the beam of a headlamp cut into darkness, catching the rough-hewn wall of a tunnel. The walls glistened faintly, wet with seepage, and the air carried the faint tang of iron and decay. Freddy stepped in first, the crunch of his boots echoing. The passage was tight, barely wide enough for two men to pass. The walls bore the telltale grooves of 19th century pick marks, hand-dug, labor-intensive, each stroke a frozen moment from another era. Rusted tools lay scattered in the muck, a broken shovel head, a bent chisel, the twisted frame of a lantern whose glass had long since shattered. And then came the unmistakable sight that made every miner's breath hitch. Veins of quartz streaked with dull yellow, glinting even in the dim beam. Visible gold, not fine dust, but thick, jagged threads running like lightning bolts through the stone. Freddy knelt, chipped a small sample, and the nugget that fell into his hand caught the light like fire. Just a few paces further, half buried in silt, Juan spotted something that didn't belong to the rock. A small leather pouch, the stitching frayed but intact. When he pulled it open, fine gold dust spilled over his gloves, followed by a cluster of small nuggets. The leather was stiff with age, but it was clear someone had been working this shaft and they'd been pulling serious gold. The tunnel split ahead, one branch curving sharply left, the other blocked entirely by a mass of collapsed rock and dirt. The blockage looked old. Roots had grown through it, and water seeped down in a slow, steady drip. Whatever lay beyond that collapse had been sealed off long before the outer barricade was built. Freddy and Juan exchanged a glance. They were standing in a place where history had stopped mid-swing. The tools, the gold, the sealed passages, it all told a story, but only in fragments, and they both knew that the next step meant pushing further into the dark, where the real secrets and possibly the real danger waited. Back on the surface, ore from the newly opened shaft was rushed straight to the wash plant, where every pound was meticulously processed under the watchful eyes of Freddy and Juan. The machines churned, water sluicing over crushed rock, separating gold from gravel with an efficiency that felt almost mechanical. Yet the results were anything but routine. Lab assays came back astonishing, an average purity of 95%. This was exceptional, even for Colorado, where gold veins were often mixed with heavy impurities. The first 48 hours alone yielded $620,000 in gold, a haul that sent shockwaves through the crew. Every pan, every scoop now held the promise of wealth beyond their wildest expectations. Combining this with the surface finds from earlier in the season, the total haul rocketed past $3.6 million. It was a personal best for both Freddy and Juan, a jackpot that validated every risk and every sleepless night. News of the strike didn't stay quiet for long. Local media arrived within days, their cameras capturing the dusty faces and weary smiles of men who'd just unearthed a fortune. Stories spread rapidly through the mining community and beyond. A forgotten shaft yielding riches no one had dared hope for. The sudden spotlight forced Freddy and Juan to secure their claim with unprecedented urgency. A professional security team was hired immediately, equipped with motion-activated floodlights that cut swaths of bright light across the once dark perimeter. They erected sturdy fencing, lined with clear warning signs. No trespassing, private property, and blunt reminders of the law. State mining inspectors arrived soon after, their official badges lending weight to the operation. They thoroughly assessed the shaft's stability and safety measures, nodding with respect at the crew's meticulous work and the quality of the find. The inspection marked an important milestone. This was no longer a secret. It was a legitimate, recognized mine. Investment offers began pouring in, unsolicited and aggressive. Corporate groups, eager to get a piece of the prize, dangled multi-million-dollar buyouts and promises of rapid expansion. Freddy and Juan heard them all, but they stood firm. This discovery was theirs, the fruit of years of experience, gut instinct, and relentless hard work. No sum was enough to part them from the claim. Yet the biggest mystery remained unsolved. Beyond the open shaft lay a deeper tunnel, blocked by centuries of collapse and decay. No records explained why the original miners had sealed this part off, or what dangers might lurk beyond. Speculation ran wild among the crew. Poisonous gases, unstable rock, or perhaps something else altogether. Freddy, however, was already looking ahead. Next season's plans were taking shape in his mind, clearing the blockage, pushing deeper into the forgotten veins, unearthing the secrets buried beyond. The promise of that dark, untouched tunnel hung over the claim like a challenge, daring them to step further into the unknown. The story wasn't over, not by a long shot. If you're as blown away by Freddy and Juan's discovery as we are, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this incredible journey.